The story begins in the grand halls of the demon castle. Cold stone walls, flickering torches, and echoes of a fading legacy. Our protagonist, Luruja Nord, the 100th Demon King, stands alone in quiet reflection. He muses aloud. In every era, justice always prevails over evil. A knight approaches, sword drawn, eyes filled with determination. "Are you the Demon King?" she asks cautiously. Luruja confirms it. He senses the weight of his destiny pressing down on him like a mountain of judgment and expectation. "I am the great being who rules over all demons," he says, accepting the role history has given him. He looks around the vast throne room and wonders when everything began. Back then, humans had always seen demons as monsters. His people were hunted under the banner of justice, slaughtered by heroes who called themselves righteous. In retaliation, the demons fought back. Eventually, both sides stood face to face, swords raised, with no path left for negotiation. There was no diplomacy, no peace, only war, and yet, he knows this war holds no meaning, but its outcome will decide the future of the world. He understands something else too. Humans fear overwhelming power. They fear what they cannot control. He recalls a vision of the future, a prophecy where the strongest heroes rise up to bring about his end. Still, he doesn't worry, not anymore, because now both sides are locked in battle, weapons already drawn, and there's no turning back. Though the Demon King possesses absolute power, the heroes gain their strength through trials bestowed upon them by gods and spirits. Each side wields incredible trump cards. And so, the battle rages, until, inevitably, justice prevails. It's a belief passed down from generation to generation, and because of it, Luruja is ultimately defeated by the heroes. As the final sword pierces his chest, he realizes just how prepared they were. Among them stand three legendary figures: a master swordsman, a holy saint, an archmage of immense magical prowess. Despite everything, the world still sees the heroes as the embodiment of justice, and him, the Demon King, as pure evil for the first time. He questions whether his defeat might actually be the right thing. A small, resigned smile crosses his lips. The knight notices his quiet laughter. She narrows her eyes. "You're smiling? Are you hiding something?" Luruja meets her gaze and reflects on a promise he once made. A memory surfaces. A little girl, his friend's daughter, was celebrating her birthday the next day. He had told her he would come. She had been overjoyed at the thought. Now, as death creeps closer, he speaks again. "The end of Deankind is near," he murmurs, tears slipping down his cheeks. "Once the Demon King is gone, the remaining demons will be hunted. Iris will not be spared." The knight remains silent for a moment, absorbing his words. Then, quietly, she admits, "It seems you're telling the truth." He responds calmly. "Of course I am," he continues. "All either side has done until now is kill each other. The church may teach that demons are servants of evil, but deep down, he believes humans and demons are the same. If you don't believe me," he adds, "then go see the truth for yourself. Perhaps in time, she'll begin to question the church's teachings, that killing demons is truly necessary." As his life fades, he speaks one last time. He expresses a hope that if she ever feels anything toward Deankind, she would understand. He corrects himself. "No," he says softly. "What I truly meant is that I hope for a shared future between demons and humans." The knight watches him disappear into the void. She reaches out instinctively, acknowledging his words, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. She says she believes him. She promises not to discriminate against demons. Luruja thanks her quietly, and only then does he realize she's a woman. That becomes his final moment, his farewell, one that leads him into the depths of hell. The last image he sees before death is the angry face of the saints, their expressions filled with hatred. He wonders why she looks at him that way, but decides, in the end, it doesn't matter, after all. He is about to vanish. Instead, he finds comfort in one final thought. If the knight survives, the future will be in good hands. Thus ends the reign of the 100th Demon King. Defeated by the heroes, remembered as evil, told as a tale with a happy ending. But that is not the truth. A voice calls out, "Luru, Luru." Over and over, softly, repeatedly, slowly, his eyes flutter open. A gentle smile greets him. A woman leans over him, speaking warmly, "You're awake." He blinks, confused. The person approaching him is a human woman. As she draws closer, suspicion stirs within him. What does she want? She picks him up tenderly, cradling him like a child. "You're such a good boy." She coos. He tries to protest, to demand answers. But then he catches sight of his own tiny hand. He's a baby. At that moment, he realizes the woman holding him is his mother. A warm, comforting sensation washes over him. Despite the confusion clouding his mind, though he knows he should think clearly, consciousness slips away again. According to an old myth passed down through the demon tribes, creatures transcend species through the cycle of birth and death, reborn into new forms. Luruja, now known as Luru, never imagined he would experience it firsthand. He remembers everything: the days spent with his comrades, the endless battles, the final confrontation with the heroes. Yet here he is, reborn with all his memories intact. Why? Did fate have a reason? Was there meaning behind this reincarnation? No matter how much he thinks about it in this body, all he can do is eat, sleep, and cry. He recalls how busy he used to be with official duties and endless wars. Now, he has nothing but time. Observing the maid nearby, he realizes he needs information fast. He wants to ask her how many years have passed since the Demon King was defeated, but quickly understands. He can't even speak. He wishes he could take control of his body soon. The maid suddenly remembers a task and picks up her wand. She begins chanting, summoning red flames to heat water. Watching her, Luru wonders if that's supposed to be a spell. The grammar in her chant sounds off. He thinks, such a basic spell shouldn't require tools or chants at all. Then it hits him, since being reborn into this infant body, he hasn't used magic even once. Could it be that he still has his magical power? He clenches his tiny fist, expecting very little. After all, humans generally have far less magical energy than demons. To his surprise, however, he feels a vast and overwhelming amount of magic within him. This wasn't just residual energy. It felt exactly like what he had wielded as the Demon King. Yet, though the power is there, he cannot channel it as smoothly as before. He suspects it's due to his current form, either because he's human or because his body is still underdeveloped. Still, he believes that with special training, he can overcome these limitations. When the maid steps away, Luru takes the opportunity to test his abilities. He knows that without his full power, he will be destroyed again. Just like in his previous life, 7 years later, he stands in a library, no longer a helpless infant, but a young boy with purpose. Books float around him, lifted effortlessly by invisible force. He reads them without needing to climb onto a chair. A snap of his fingers returns the books neatly to their shelves, though he worries about drawing attention. He's relieved to find he can use magic quite well now. He suspects he could even perform large-scale spells, if he dared, but those kinds of powers were capable of destroying entire villages, and that was not something he intended to test. As he walks through the room, he reflects on what he has learned. Besides magic, he has discovered something else. From the day of his defeat, several thousand years have passed. That explains why the world feels so unfamiliar. Suddenly, someone calls his name. His mother has found him. She comments on how often he disappears into the library. She notices the book in his hands. "Are you reading myths about the ancient demons again?" she asks with a knowing smile. He nods. "They're fascinating." He replies, "The ancient demons, once locked in war with humanity, are now considered mythical beings. Many doubt their existence entirely." His mother gently pats his head. "Do you really love reading this much? Or is it just the curiosity of childhood?" Luru smiles softly. He knows the truth. Demons live far longer than humans, even if only a few remain. He believes he can find them, but for now, at just 7 years old, he's confined to the village and can do little more than read. His mother recalls something. "Oh, your father Patrick will be returning home soon." She flips through a letter. He said it would be about 2 weeks. She hopes he brings more books. Patrick Caddis Nora, a sword instructor for the kingdom of Leonard's Knights and the Lord of Caddis Village, is someone Luru longs to see again. He hopes to resume swordsmanship training with him, but his mother pauses again, remembering something else. "Oh, Did you plan to meet Rusty and the others today? Luru realizes he lost track of time. Yes, he confirms. His mother urges him to hurry and get ready, or he'll be late. He agrees. Soon, he finds himself at the meeting spot. He arrives just a bit behind schedule. Someone calls out. Rusty waves energetically. Two girls stand beside him. You're late. One of them teases. Rusty smirks. So Luru finally showed up. Didn't we agree to meet here? Luru apologizes, explaining he got caught up in reading a book. Rusty tilted his head, looking at Luru with mild disbelief. Reading's really that fun for you? He crossed his arms proudly. But if someone's a boy, their interests should be about adventure, right? Then, puffing out his chest like he was announcing himself as the next village hero, he declared, I'm gonna become an adventurer someday. Luru simply looked at him, silent, unreadable, and just a little amused by Rusty's dramatic flair. He chimed in with a smirk. Yeah. Rusty always talks about being an adventurer. She leaned forward teasingly. But let's see when you actually leave the village. Rusty scowled. Come on, don't be so harsh. Yuri gently stepped in. She's right though, she said softly. Dreaming is important too. The three kids had been Luru's closest companions since his reincarnation. He knew both me and Yuri harbored feelings for Rusty, likely why they didn't want him running off to chase some fantasy. Still, whether Rusty realized it or not, well, that was another matter entirely. Changing the subject, Luru asked Rusty, Didn't you make a promise today? Rusty blinked, then snapped his fingers. Oh, right. Today's the day. His eyes lit up with excitement. There's something happening today, and I was really looking forward to it. Luru nodded. That's what I thought. Rusty grinned widely. Today, real adventurers are coming to the village. Yuri raised an eyebrow. Adventurers come through sometimes. But aren't they usually just guards for merchants? Rusty shook his head furiously. No way. This time is different. He pointed dramatically into the air. A top-class adventurer, the kind who explores uncharted lands and will one day become a legend. He grabbed both Yuri and me by the hands. We have to go meet them now. Though hesitant at first, everyone knew once Rusty got an idea in his head, there was no stopping him. Not even a direct order from the king would stop him. So moments later, the group reached the village entrance and found a small crowd already gathered. But instead of a legendary adventurer, all they saw were villagers chatting and going about their business. Luru glanced around. It seems like the guest hasn't arrived yet. Rusty deflated like a balloon with a leak. But only for a second. Then he perked back up. Maybe they're just late. I'll go check. And with that, he dashed to the front of the crowd. The two girls sighed and chased after him. Luru smiled quietly to himself. He understood what it meant to be an adventurer. Exploring unknown lands, slaying monsters, living by your own rules. In his past life, such a profession hadn't been necessary. Back then, most lands were under strict control, and demons ruled over vast territories. Now, however, it seemed those lands had returned to wild, untamed chaos. He couldn't help but wonder if this was simply the result of time passing, or if something deeper was at play. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air. A massive monster burst through the trees, charging straight toward the village, and directly at Rusty, who stood clueless at the front. Luru reacted instantly, releasing a subtle pulse of power. He recognized the creature immediately. It was from the forest, before he could do anything else. Another force cut through the air. An elf appeared seemingly out of nowhere, summoning a whirlwind spell that halted the beast mid-charge. Then came the final blow. A man leapt onto the monster's back with effortless grace and, with a single swing of his sword, decapitated it cleanly. Luru stood frozen. He had just witnessed something extraordinary as the monster collapsed lifelessly to the ground. The man turned to Rusty. You okay? He asked casually. You're not hurt, are you? Rusty, still shaking from the encounter, scrambled to his feet and shouted excitedly, overwhelmed by what he'd just seen. Me gave him a nudge. You should thank him. Rusty stammered slightly, finally managing to express his gratitude. The woman approached warmly. scanning the group. I'm glad everyone's safe. Luru noticed her presence. Calm, composed, and clearly powerful. Before he could ask anything, Rusty beat him to the punch. Are you a spirit? He blurted out, wide-eyed. You used magic just now, and your ears are pointy. The woman chuckled. Close, but not quite. She introduced herself. I'm an elf, a race born from the spirits. My name is Yumis. The adventurer beside her gave a small wave. And I'm Gran. We travel together as partners. Luru felt the magical energy radiating from both of them. It was unlike anything he'd sensed in the village before. They were truly capable individuals. Yumis smiled. So many village kids dream of becoming adventurers. Do you all share that dream? Rusty practically bounced in place. I do. I want to be a real adventurer too. Gran laughed, clearly entertained. I won't say it's impossible, he said, ruffling Rusty's hair affectionately. But if you're serious about it, you've got a long road ahead. He grew serious. Without proper training, the path of an adventurer can be deadly. Rusty didn't hesitate. I'll work hard. Gran chuckled again. That's a good answer. You've got potential. Then he added, I'll tell you some stories later. But first, can you show me the way into the village? Rusty nearly exploded with joy. Of course. Watching the exchange, me muttered to Yuri. I hope Gran doesn't get him too fired up. Yuri smiled knowingly. Do boys ever really change, no matter how old they get? Yumis, having overheard, leaned toward Luru curiously. Is it complicated between them? Luru shrugged. It's a typical love triangle. Yumis' eyes sparkled mischievously. What about you? Are you making it a love square? Luru gave her a flat stare. I'm just an observer. Yumis frowned slightly. Well, that's boring. She glanced at me and Yuri. They're cute, you know. You might want to stake your claim while you still can. Luru resisted the urge to facepalm. That sounds highly inappropriate for a child. He paused. And honestly, I enjoy watching more than getting involved. Yumis pouted. Ugh, fine. I take back my compliment. Your taste is terrible. Luru deadpanned. That was harsh. Then he offered politely, but if you'd like, I can guide you to the inn too. You must be tired. Yumis brightened. That actually sounds nice. As they walked, Yumis mentioned casually, we were attacked by a monster on our way here too. That night, at the inn, adults drank while the children sat nearby, sipping juice and listening intently. Gran began telling stories of their routine, stopping by ruins, fighting monsters, taking on quests. But this time, he added, Yumis had a particular interest in these ruins. Yumis slammed her beer down lightly in protest. If you're bringing that up, then you're worse. Remember when you said you wanted to join a fighting tournament? Gran looked genuinely surprised. Wait, weren't you the one who said you were tired earlier? Luru's mother smiled warmly. It's wonderful how kind they are. Luru agreed. Rusty and the others are already completely attached to them. One of the village men turned to Yumis. Did you two come here specifically to visit the ruins on the edge of town? Yumis nodded. Not exactly. No one really knows when or why the structure was built. It looks ancient. She added, but I don't think it's just some random pile of rocks. I believe it was built by the ancient demons. Her words sent a jolt through Luru. Gran scratched his chin. It's not easy to confirm that. Even if we find ruins, there's no way to prove they belong to the ancient demons. Yumis groaned. Can't you at least pretend it's possible? Isn't it romantic to imagine? Luru considered his own thoughts. Gran had a point. Ruins could be found anywhere. And while he could recognize ancient demon structures instinctively, proving it was another matter entirely. Their existence remained nothing more than myth. Me turned to Gran. So, do you two always investigate ruins? Gran shook his head. Most of my time is spent killing monsters. Exploring ruins and entering tournaments are just side hobbies. He added with a grin. We came here because Yumis wanted to visit the area. Though personally, I wouldn't mind joining a few tournaments. Luru watched them, deep in thought. Their journeys didn't seem driven by requests or duties. Instead, they followed curiosity. Freedom defined them. They were the truest form of adventurers, wandering wherever they pleased, chasing whatever interested them. He couldn't help but smile. Their lives looked genuinely fun. Then Rusty suddenly blurted out, "I really want to become an adventurer." He looked up at Gran with hopeful eyes. "I needed help today, but I'll work harder. Please, take me with you." Gran hesitated, then said gently, "I can't do that." Rusty's face fell. "Huh? What do you mean, no?" Panic crept into his voice. "Why won't you accept me?" Gran quickly clarified. "It's not that simple." He looked at Rusty kindly. "You're still young. There's time. If you really want to be an adventurer, start by learning everything you can hear." Gran gave Rusty a knowing smile before speaking gently. "Being an adventurer isn't just about the heroic moments," he said. "There's a lot of boring stuff at the beginning too." He added with a touch of seriousness, "And more importantly, I don't have the resources to take care of you until you become one yourself." Rusty blinked, then nodded eagerly. "So, does that mean you'll take me on once I become an adventurer?" Gran chuckled, shaking his head. "If you really insist, I guess I don't have much choice." He grinned. "I'll be your master when the time comes." Then he warned him, "But don't expect me to teach you everything. I can only guide you so far." Despite that, Rusty was over the moon. He thanked Gran enthusiastically. Practically bouncing off the walls, Luru watched silently, noting how surprisingly persuasive Rusty could be when it came to negotiation. His mother, sitting nearby, looked thoughtful. "Rusty seems happy," she said softly. "But I'm not sure if becoming an adventurer is really the best path for him." Luru reassured her. "I think he'll be fine. My father always said Rusty had great potential." Mi whispered to Yuri, "Looks like Rusty's officially going to be Gran's apprentice now." That only made Rusty even more excited. Yuri smiled. "That's a good opportunity for him." Then she added quietly, "But I kind of feel sad too." Before either of them could say more, Yumis suddenly appeared behind them. The two girls yelped in surprise. "Oh no!" Yumis quickly apologized. "I didn't mean to scare you. I just wanted to join the conversation." She leaned in with a grin. "Are we talking about love troubles?" Yuri immediately denied it. "No, nothing like that." Mi explained instead. "We're just worried about Rusty. He can be a bit clumsy sometimes." Yumis nodded thoughtfully, even though no names were mentioned. "In my opinion," she said, "Rusty will definitely achieve his dream one day." She paused. "When that happens, do you think you'll still be able to stay behind in the village and just watch him go?" Before the girls could respond, someone clapped loudly and announced, "It's getting late. Time for the kids to head home." Though they protested, there was no arguing with bedtime rules. Luru's mother turned to him. "It's time to go." He agreed, offering a polite wave to Gran and Yumis as he did. He couldn't help but think how interesting the two adventurers were, and how much more he would have loved to hear their stories. On the way back, his mother asked aloud, "When was the last time this village felt this lively?" Luru understood the quiet loneliness that followed such joy, the same feeling that always settled after a cheerful gathering, no matter how many years passed. His mother hesitated for a moment. Then she almost asked, "Will you leave the village someday too?" But she stopped herself. Instead, she simply squeezed his hand gently and said, "Never mind. It's nothing." Luru acknowledged her silence with a small nod. He knew what she meant. She already understood. Someday, when he grew up, he'd leave too. The next day, Luru trained alone in the forest, practicing with a wooden sword he swung repeatedly, maintaining proper form and focus. After a while, he paused and wiped away sweat, deciding that today's session was done. Though his adoptive father, Patrick, was an elite knight, Luru couldn't afford to reveal his true demon lord powers. If he did, people might notice something strange as he walked home. He considered improving a bit more before his next training session. Then, from a distance, he heard shouting. Looking ahead, he saw villagers searching frantically. Clearly concerned, he wondered what had happened. Just then, a woman called out to him. "Where have you been? We were worried you were alone too." Luru answered calmly. "I was by myself. What's going on?" The woman's face darkened. "Rusty and the others are missing." Luru raised his voice slightly. "What did you just say?" "Rusty and the others are missing." She didn't answer directly. "Have you seen them since this morning?" She continued. "They seemed so eager to spend time with the adventurers yesterday. I'm afraid they might have gone outside the village without permission." Luru considered the possibility. Then he remembered something from the previous conversation. Yumis had mentioned visiting a ruin near the village. Though he had never been there himself, he believed it was located in the opposite direction from town. He told the woman he understood and promised to help search. She thanked him, urging him not to go anywhere dangerous. Luru replied politely that he would do his best, but deep down he knew. If those 3 kids were missing, his first priority was finding them. They were, after all, the first real friends he had made since becoming human. When he reached the village entrance, he was surprised to see Yumis already there. She shouted, "Stay back! I'm about to cast a barrier around the village." With a graceful motion, she summoned the spirits of the forest, innocent beings bound by mana, to aid in constructing a magical wall between the village and the wild beyond. Luru called out in alarm, "Wait! Rusty and the others are missing." Hearing this, Yumis froze. "What did you just say?" Luru explained quickly. "The children aren't in the village. Everyone thinks they might have gone to the ruin." He added, "If I can't find them alone, I'll ask the adults for help." But Yumis, full of regret, shook her head. "I can't stop casting now." A moment later, the Arcana mystic wall materialized at the edge of the village, a shimmering magical barrier separating the village from the forest. Luru shouted, "Why did you finish it anyway?" Yumis pleaded, "My job is to protect the people inside the village." Suddenly, gunfire rang out. The sound came from the other side of the barrier. They both turned toward the source. A magic machina was firing at the barrier. Yumis quickly explained, "These machines came from the ruin. Several of them were flying toward the village, so I acted fast." Luru recognized the threat instantly. Those machines had magical cannons for legs, clearly demon-made weapons designed to exterminate humans. He was grateful for Yumis' quick action. Still, he couldn't ignore a deeper concern. What if they move on to nearby villages or cities? He asked Yumis, "Doesn't this seem odd to you?" She responded, "Well, the ruins themselves aren't unusual." As they were about to turn back, the barrier began to collapse. Gran was still inside, fighting a massive magic machina. Luru quickly deduced it must have been a trap set within the ruin. If that were true, then there had to be some kind of control device managing the machines. He told Yumis urgently, "I need to go somewhere right now." Confused, she tried to stop him. But Yumis soon realized something shocking. He placed his hand on the barrier. She informed him, "Only the caster can grant passage through the wall." Then she urged him, "You should go home." Instead, Luru broke through the barrier using his own power. His hand pierced straight through the magical wall as if it weren't there. Yumis stared in disbelief. "How did you do that?" "I didn't give you permission." Luru apologized gently. "I rewrote the magic equation. The barrier is under my control now too." She gasped. "What do you mean, rewrite the equation?" "That's impossible." Without further explanation, he stepped through. "I increased the barrier's output slightly using your mana," he added. "And I applied the same restrictions, so if Rusty and the others return, you'll be the one protecting them." He turned to leave. "I'm counting on you." And with that, he ran off, ignoring Yumis' startled calls behind him. Left standing there, stunned, Yumis muttered to herself, "What just happened? And who exactly is that boy?" Inside the ruin, Gran was shielding the children. He had noticed something strange. Even though the machines were active, they hadn't attacked yet. "Stay still," he instructed the frightened group. "They might only react to movement. Wait for my signal." But he also knew, He couldn't hold them off forever. Then, a familiar voice called out from behind him. Gran spun around in shock. It was Luru. Gran frowned. "What are you doing here? What happened with Yumis?" Luru answered. "She's still casting the barrier around the village." Gran cursed under his breath. "We don't have time for this." He pointed to the children. "Since you're here already, hide with them." Luru scanned the scene and was relieved to see everyone safe. Then he turned his attention to the enemy machine. It was a Rupes Gigantes, a titan originally built for civil labor, but repurposed for combat in emergencies. Luru realized something. He was likely the only one capable of stopping it now. He also recalled another model, the Cannon Abyss, flying machina equipped with dangerously precise targeting systems. Whatever was controlling these machines, it was clear. It wasn't random. Someone or something was pulling the strings. And he needed to find out who. These titans appeared to share the same blueprint and function. He stepped forward, curious to see whether they would react once he crossed a certain boundary. Gran shouted for him to stop, warning him not to go any closer. Despite the plea, he continued walking, prompting Gran to urgently beg him to listen. Rusty also cried out, imploring him to halt. Calmly, he reassured them that he was all right and told Gran he was depending on him. He advanced a few steps toward the Titan. Instantly, the machine stirred in response, confirming his suspicions. As he retreated, the machina returned to its dormant state. Turning to Gran, he explained that the spot where he now stood marked the edge of the activation zone. As long as they didn't approach the ruin beyond that point, the Titans wouldn't engage. Gran, observing the machine's behavior, noted that they seemed to be guarding the ruin and questioned why. He agreed, voicing the same curiosity about their programming. Since he had no memories related to the ruin, he concluded that it must have been built after his death. He informed Gran of his intention to go inside and investigate. Gran strongly objected, adamantly declaring he wouldn't allow it. He insisted it was too dangerous and added that the entire situation had arisen due to their actions. Therefore, he argued it was his responsibility to stay back. After all, he was still just a child and lacked the strength to handle such a risk. He turned to Gran and asked if what he truly meant was that the only condition for acceptance would be having sufficient strength. Then he asked again, if someone truly capable stood before the ruins, would that make entry permissible? Gran, after a moment's pause, replied bluntly, yes. Without hesitation, he dashed straight toward the Titans, shouting for Gran to watch closely. Gran, shocked and confused, tried to stop him, but it was too late. He had already sprinted past the threshold near the ruins. As he crossed it, one of the Titans activated, lifting its weapon to strike. But before it could, he launched himself high into the air. While airborne, he smiled down at the massive machine and slammed a devastating punch into it, reducing it to scrap. Gran and the others, including his childhood friends, stood frozen in disbelief at the sight. As he landed, more Titans emerged from every direction. One hurled a massive spear at him. He casually extended his hand and caught it mid-air with ease. With a single motion, he flipped the spear around and retaliated, obliterating the remaining Titans as if they were made of paper. Gran, stunned beyond words, finally asked what on earth was going on with him.